Hey everyone, today's lesson is about working for others. We're learning about earning money. How to earn money? Well, to earn money, one of the ways is to actually work for other people. When working for other people, we're going to earn a wage or a salary. A wage is normally paid per hour. So for every hour you work, you're earning a wage. And a salary is a payment calculated over 1 year, and you may be paid every month or every fortnight in your account. Now, let's look at some examples to understand how to calculate a wage and even a salary. Let's start with the first example. The first example says Jason is paid $21 an hour for working a 36-hour week. What is his weekly wage? So he is working 36 hours every week and he's getting paid $20 for every hour out of those 36. So easily, let's see how to work out the total pay he gets on a weekly basis. $21 is per hour. How many hours is he working? He's working 36 hours. Make sure you have your calculator handy. 21 times 36. Now we are able to work out his weekly wage. Grab your calculator. 21 times 36. He earns $756 per week. That is his weekly wage. Simple. How do we do it? His hourly rate times how many hours he worked. He worked 36 hours times 21. He earns $756 every week. Now, let's do another example. The next example. Two brothers, Fadi and Sammy, are comparing their wages. Fadi earns $18.50 an hour for working at a factory 37 hours a week, while Sammy earns $19.35 for working 35 hours a week at a farm. Who has the higher weekly wage and by how much? So we're comparing both wages. We want to know the wage of Fadi and the wage that Sammy earns, then compare them together and find out who earns more and by how much. So we're working out two things: who earns more and by how much. Let's see by doing Fadi's earnings first. Let's see his weekly wage. $18.50. So Fadi, $18.50 times, how many hours does he work? He works 37 hours. We're going to work out, grab your calculator, $18.50 times 37. He earns $684.50. That's his weekly wage. So Fadi earns $684.50. $18.50 is the hourly rate, and he works 37 hours. That's his weekly wage. Now let's work out his brother. Sammy. Okay, how much does he earn? He earns $19.35. And he works 35 hours every week. So once again, grab our calculator. $19.35 times 35 hours, $677.25. So we can see here straight away that although Sammy earns $19.35, he earns more than his brother Fadi. However, Fadi works 2 hours extra. Fadi earns more than his brother Sammy. So Fadi is the one who earns more. He earns $684.50, while his brother earns $677.25. So we can clearly mention that Fadi earns more. Now, by how much? Well, how much does he earn more by? We take away the two incomes. So the wages for Fadi take away the wages for Sammy. So $684.50 minus $677.25. Again, grab your calculator. Let's do it. $684.50 minus $677.25. $7.25. So Fadi earns $7.25 more than his brother. He works 37 hours at $18.50 each hour, while Sammy earns $19.35 for 35 hours. So he works and he earns $677.25. So Fadi, clearly he makes $7.25 more than his brother. Let's look at another example. Sarah earns a salary of $59,000. How much will she receive weekly if it is calculated on 52.178 weeks per year? So we are told that Sarah earns a yearly salary of $59,000. So every year she is getting paid $59,000. We want to know how much is she going to receive every week. We're going to calculate it on 52.178 weeks per year. Now we know that there are 52 weeks in a year, but that's not exact. Exactly, it's actually 52.178 weeks every year. So the salary is $59,000 and we want to know the weekly. So the yearly salary is going to be divided by the weekly amount. How many weeks are there in a year? There are 52.178. So the 59,000 is going to be divided by how many weeks in a year? We want to know the weekly wage. 52.178. Once again, have your calculator ready? $59,000 every year divided by 52.178. Sarah's going to earn $1,130.74. That's her weekly wage. Every week, she's going to be paid $1,130.74. How did we get that? We know the salary. Every year she receives $59,000. We want to know how much is that on a weekly basis. Divided by 52.178. She's receiving $1,130.74. Every week, that's how much she's going to get paid. That is her weekly wage. The next example. Bill is comparing between two jobs. The first job has a fortnightly pay of $2,120. While the second job is advertising and saying, we're going to pay you $57,000 a year. 1 year, we know, is 52.178 weeks. Help Bill decide which job has the higher weekly pay and by how much. Okay, so now we have two jobs. We're comparing. And at times, you're going to see that, where you have two advertisements, two jobs, and you want one of them. What do? Well, you need to compare. We only can compare when we can actually convert both pays to per week. So change the fortnightly pay, make it into a weekly pay, and the yearly pay, make it also into weekly. That way we can compare each one. Job number one, how much are they going to pay Bill every week? And job number two, how much are they going to pay Bill every week? So on a weekly basis. Let's do the first job. We know a fortnight is 2 weeks. So we want to know 1 week. $2,120 is the fortnightly pay divided by 2. We want to know per 1 week, not per 1 week, not per fortnight. So 2,120 divided by 2, $1,060. That is the weekly pay that job number one will actually be giving Bill. What about the second one? $57,000. It's very similar to the example we did earlier on. So 57,000, that's the yearly. We want to know weekly. Divide by 52.178. Do it with me. 57,000 divided by 52.178. $1,092.41. So the weekly wage for job number one is $1,060, while job number two is offering $1,092 per week. So clearly this is going to be a better job because it's going to pay a little bit more. How much? Well, let's work it out. We can easily find out. 1,092.41 minus the other job, which is 1,060. Okay, you can grab your calculator, work it out, or you can work it out quickly. We know $32.41. So job number two over here and that's number one. Job number two is paying more by $32.41. So now we can help Bill and we show him that job number two, the salary of $57,000 per year, is actually a higher pay. It's actually higher by $32.41 every week. The next example. Miriam works at a fruit shop. She earns $20.50 per hour working from Monday to Friday, and she works 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. So she's working 3 hours on Monday, 3 hours on Tuesday, 3 hours on Wednesday, 3 hours on Thursday, and 3 hours on Friday. She also works on Saturday. She earns $25 per hour working from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. So on Saturday she gets a different rate. It's weekend, it's a higher rate. She earns $25 an hour. She works from 7 to 1, 6 hours on Saturday. Now let's set up the working out to find out how much does she earn in total, her weekly wage in total working those hours. Let's start with the weekdays. The weekdays are Monday to Friday. How many days are they? 5 days. So 5 days. How many hours every day? From 12 to 3. From 12 to 3 is 3 hours. And how much is she getting paid? She is getting $20.50 per hour. $20.50. It's that simple. 5 days, she works 3 hours every day. She gets $20.50 for every hour. Grab your calculator. Let's work out how much she earns for the weekdays. So we have 5 days times 3 hours every day times $20.50. On the weekdays, she earns $307.50. That's her weekdays. Monday to Friday, 3 hours every day. Well, what about on Saturday? On Saturday is actually just one day. She works 6 hours. And we know it's $25. So basically, one day, 6 hours, $25. 25 times 6, $150. Basically, this is how much she earns on weekdays, and this is how much she earns on Saturday. Well, what now? We want to know the total week. What do? We add them up. 150 plus $307.50. How much is her total? Well, you can grab your calculator. We can do it straight away. We can know 150 plus $307.50 is $457.50. That's in dollars, of course. So $457.50, that's how much she earns every week. She works on weekdays and she works on the weekend. Total, she earns $457.50.